Hello and welcome to Car File. Now let me ask you a question. The car, it can be so much in our lives. It frees us, it gives us mobility, it can move us faster and further than these puny frames could ever manage unaided. But more than just that, we can use it in other ways too. We can use it to tell the world how we see ourselves, or we can use it to try and change the way the world sees us. The car can be all of that to all of us. Why then are there cars like these? Small diesels. I can understand small cars, they're great. You can park them in small places if that's what you want to do. I can understand diesel cars. If you drive 1,000,000 miles a year up and down the motorway selling computers, great, they're the thing for you. But small diesels, it just sounds like the most boring prospect on the planet. So we're here to find out if we can make them exciting in any way, and we've got three to look at. First of all, the Skoda Fabia 1.9 TDI. Considering the international joke that Skoda always was, it's incredible that what they now have is actually quite a desirable little motor from the outside. It looks good, and I can't believe I'm saying that. There is something of a baby Audi about it. Not altogether surprising, of course. VW owns Skoda, and VW don't like to build tatty cars, which explains why it looks so solid, so purposeful, and, well, so good. And our second car for us to look at today is not only made by Volkswagen, it is a Volkswagen. It's the Vw Polo Tdi Sport. And I should warn you, it is the most expensive of our small diesels today. The Polo may be a small car, but I've got to admit it does manage to have that hewn from one solid lump of metal look about it. Particularly at the front end, where that cluster of 4 headlamps do look, well, without getting too poncy here, like jewels set in stone. And finally, something still pretty new, the Citroen C3. A car seen by many as a modern take on the old 2CV, loved as it was, of course, by hippies, school teachers and vegetarian yogurt weavers the world over. Citroen hate it when we start going on about the 2CV when we're discussing the C3. In fact, they go berserk. So the 2CV was a light, nimble, rugged, cheap little runabout, and it had a pronounced curvy shape. And don't tell me it's a coincidence that the new C3, is a light, nimble runabout and it has a pronounced curvy shape. They could have made it box shape, but they didn't. Come on, it's the spit of a modern take on the 2CV. Where it does differ from this 2CV very much is in feeling that it's made from something a little more substantial than damp cardboard. Very much more substantial, in fact. It feels pretty solid. Though that isn't something that's carried over to the interior, where it feels a little less substantial, a bit plasticky and a bit tacky. It lacks that feeling of friendly solidity that you found in older French cars. The Citroen C3, thanks to its much smaller 1.4-litre engine, only manages to generate 69 brake horsepower. That's plenty in a car this light though, and the insurance, well, barely anything at all. Group 3. The thing with the C3 is, yeah, it's distinctive, and yes, it does turn heads. It's just the heads it turns that causes me some concern. They're the same heads that would turn if they were admiring a particularly nice pastel-shaded anorak you were wearing, or maybe your comfy shoes. Still, if we're going to talk small cars, there is one old stager we've simply got to mention, the good old Ford Fiesta. Now, that has been radically updated recently, and the good news is, it too is available as a diesel. All good. It seems like only a couple of days ago that diesel engines were only ever dropped into huge cars that covered thousands of miles a week. And yet here we are with the launch of the dinky new Ford Fiesta, and the diesel engine version is the best of the range. I'm not kidding. Of the two petrol engine versions, the 1.4 runs out of puff when you try and pass anything faster than a bus, and even the 1.6 feels wimpy. By comparison, the 1.4 litre diesel feels smooth and powerful, pulling away from much lower revs and making the small car feel much bigger. It's not exactly a rocket though. 60 miles an hour takes a rather tedious 14.9 seconds to arrive, and it's all over when you get to 101 mph. It is frugal though. Ford claims 65.7 mpg combined, which is not bad. Ford have worked hard to help the Fiesta grow up a bit without sacrificing the driving fun that it's always offered. It still feels agile and fast with a firm and controlled ride, perhaps a little too much so around town when it can get a bit jarring and bumpy. I know it's only a small car, but it's still got to have enough room to be useful. The previous Fiesta was always a tad pokey, and so Ford have made sure that this new one gives plenty of space, both for front and rear seat passengers and boot space. The Fiesta's another 1.4 litre, and we're down now to 67 brake horsepower, which isn't very good at all. It's slightly quicker than the C3 off the mark at 14.9 seconds though, but you will pay a little more for your insurance. It's an enormous and terrifying Group 4! Ooh. Small car, of course, no longer means badly equipped. Even the base models get twin airbags, a CD player and central locking. Move up the range and you can add electric windows, aircon, alloys and special sporty interiors. There's no way could Ford afford to launch the new Fiesta with anything other than a competitive price tag. The range starts at £8,495 and the diesel version weighs in at a reasonable £9,495. Not so very long ago, for me to even be seen driving this, you would have seen before you on your screen a mouldering corpse driving a tatty, rusty Eastern car. Now though, things have changed and Skoda is stylish. Well, if it is pretty on the outside, then the Skoda Fabia, it's got to be said, is less pretty on the inside. It appears to have been coated and covered with, well, the remnants of old men's crimpline slacks. It's a nightmare in beige. That said, one thing that isn't in here is tatty or ragged or badly put together. I get the impression that the VW influence really does shine through here. It feels extremely solid. And the design, revolting colours and material aside, is subdued and really quite grown up for a small car. They haven't gone for any of this teenage girl, fussy, fun, frilly, funky nonsense. It's sensible and neatly laid out. When it comes to the drive, I've got to say, 1.9 diesel engine, I suppose not surprisingly in a car this size, is plenty. It feels lovely. You don't have that tinny, nasty, raspy feeling you get in some small cars because it's a diesel. There's loads of gutsy power from no revs whatsoever. It's actually, and I can't believe I'm saying this, quite fun to drive. And you know, as I proceed along here, there's people up here, they're going to see me driving a Skoda. Look, there they are. Here's me in a Skoda. I'm not ashamed. Of course, I'll never see him again. That helps. But I'm not ashamed. The Skoda manages 100 brake horsepower just like the Volkswagen. It doesn't have perhaps the same feeling of quality, and the insurance group is still up there at 6. 0 to 60 is a tad slower too. 11.5 seconds means it's about a second behind the Polo. Even Skoda themselves will confess that we're still reeling from the culture shock of trying to accept that Skoda are good cars. It is a bit like discovering that little and large are funny. And we've been wrong all these years. Of course, they are helped by the fact that underneath this particular Skoda there lurks, well, a VW. A bit like this one, and we will be testing the Vw Polo later on in the programme. But first, here's some helpful hints if you're thinking of buying cars like these. Life used to be simple. Small cars were for mothers and little old ladies. But somewhere along the line, everything changed. And now they're not just small cars, they're super minis. But why are people buying small?
I think people are a lot more conscious of overall running costs, fuel costs, servicing and general maintenance of the vehicles. Company car tax has been a factor in that as well, people downsizing but still getting the same level of comforts.
There's room for like two adults, 3 children, plenty of room in the boot. You know, they're a different car than they used to be.
So if it's not the sweet old ladies buying, who is it?
The small car market has grown. It's not seen as the housewife's car anymore. There are more family people buying smaller cars because of the fact that the room inside the car is getting bigger.
A lot of people from all over the band, there's still the housewife buying them, but a lot of young people just commuting to work, and like I say, people coming out of bigger cars to smaller cars for the overall running costs and like I say, company tax.
With an evolving market and ever-changing regulations, it might not be long before even the vainest of us is driving a Super Mini. Although it might take more than increased passenger space to convince those high-flying execs that small is better. Coming up after the break, more oil-burning fun on a tiny scale as we check out this, the Vw Polo Tdi Sport. See you in a few minutes. Hello and welcome back to Car Far. On the programme this week, we're looking into the fun to be had with small diesel cars. Oh, and there is fun to be had. Well, there might well be in this, the third of our cars, the Vw Polo Tdi Sport. When you were a nipper, somebody had come along and fitted seatbelts to your pedal car, you'd have been miffed. It's about fun, not responsibility. So why does the interior of this little tiny VW Polo have to so closely resemble the office of the MD of International Funeral Directors? It is very sombre and serious. I'm finding it oppressive in here. I feel a bit frivolous, like I'm not serious enough for it. Everything in here is matte black and grey. Somebody with a black polo neck sweater and little German glasses designed this, I'm sure. All of that aside, the result is it does feel very much like a bigger car, and that's in keeping with the whole theme of the Polo. It really is masquerading as a great big sombre car, whereas it's not, it's a little tiny city car. It feels the same at the wheel too, substantial. The steering isn't heavy, but it's not fingertip light as it might be in some city cars. The whole car feels solid and a lot bigger than it really is. Once again, a 1.9 turbo diesel engine is more than sufficient in a small car. And once again, it adds to that theme of being a bigger car because of that low-down grunt. You're not left feeling you're in a tinny little runabout. You are again left feeling as you grip the thick steering wheel. I'm in a proper substantial car. Don't get carried away though. You need to glance in shop windows every now and again to remember you're not. You're in a little girl's motor and everybody knows it. 100 brake horsepower really is plenty in a car this small, and because it's coming from a diesel, that means it's a really grunty 100 brake horsepower. And at Insurance Group 6, not too bad, but hardly cheap. For a small car, or even for a big car, come to think of it, it does feel very, very well put together. Now, for a sector of the market that until recently didn't even exist, it's become a very busy place. And here are some more alternative suggestions if you're looking for a small diesel. Now, our alternative car comes from a manufacturer that is no stranger to the world of small diesels. Those old Peugeot 205 diesels used to clatter on for hundreds of thousands of miles. But this, a 206 2-litre HDI, looks a rather different prospect. Not the same practical motor. It's got alloy wheels, spoilers at the front and at the back, and fog lamps too. So could it be that the legendary 205 GTI has been reborn as a diesel? Word? No, not really. Well, that's 3 words. but you know what I mean. Look at the figures, they speak for themselves. 0 to 60 in over 11.5 seconds. 90 brake horsepower, hardly a firecracker. Driving the 206, any of the 206s, not just this 2-litre HDI. And you do realise just how complicated a thing a driving position is. Think about all the different factors. You've got the seat squab itself, the height and the angle of it, the rake of the seat back, where is the seat, forwards or backwards, the pedals, where are they, where are your feet in relation to your knees and the rest of your body, and the steering wheel, is it out or in or up or down or twisted this way or that. In all, it's a very complicated sum, and it's one that the designers of the Peugeot 206 got horribly wrong. The result is a truly awful driving position, unrivaled, I'd say, in the car market today for sheer discomfort. The 2-litre HDI engine in the Peugeot 206 only manages to generate 90 brake horsepower, but it is aimed at some serious fuel consumption, 56.5 mpg. But that's only good as the Polo, remember. Insurance is down a little bit though, Group 5 is one lower. Where it falls down, again I'm afraid, is the interior. It's actually quite light and airy. For a small car it doesn't feel dinky and cramped, but the materials used are dismal. It's so gloomy, not just the colour, it's various shades that don't entirely match of black, but it's the texture. Somebody decided to use this rather thin and nasty plastic, and then to imprint upon it, it looks like the pattern of an elephant's skin. It's not very nice. Where the 206 will always do well, of course, is in terms of reputation. It's always enjoyed a big following. In fact, all small Peugeots have from the 205 onwards. Well, if you can live with that driving position, then you've got to be sure, and you don't mind a rather shabby cabin, it does represent excellent value, and it's certainly a good-looking motor. But if that doesn't set your world alight, here's 5 alternative small diesels. In 5th place, boy, your granddad would have loved this, the Vw 25 TDI. No, it's nothing like as boring as it sounds. Just under 100 brake horsepower available. 0 to 60 in 9.9 seconds is perfectly respectable for a car that can return 55.4 mpg. The insurance is a little bit steep though, at 7. In 4th place, Peugeot 106 1.5D Zest 2. The name is substantially bigger than the car and the power, the rather measly 58 brake horsepower. It's economical though, and the insurance isn't too bad at Group 5, and it does look very cute. In 3rd place, the Vauxhall Corsa 1.7 DTI SXi. Who'd have thought it, a Corsa managing anything respectable? But they are looking pretty decent of late, and at 74 brake horsepower and 60.1 mpg, you can't argue with the figures, and the insurance is the lowest of the bunch, just 4. From Seat, the Ibiza 1.9 TDIS makes it to 2nd place. With a mighty 100 brake horsepower, it's the most powerful of these 5 alternatives. The MPG isn't bad either, 57.6, and you don't pay too much through the nose for your insurance at Group 6. It's still one lower than the Rover. In 1st place, though, our top alternative is the really rather radical Audi A2 1.4 TDI, a small car with apparently huge amounts of space. It might look quirky, but it does the business with the numbers, 75 brake horsepower and returning an enormous 64.2 mpg. For a posh car, you don't even pay through the nose for insurance either, just at Group 5. We have seen a whole load of small diesel cars in the programme, and maybe now is a good moment to get back to my initial question, which was why, when cars can be so exciting, are some of them so boring? And the answer is probably this, that one thing we didn't talk about that cars are very good at doing is just getting us from one place to another so we can do something exciting when we get there. And maybe that's where small diesel cars come in. And so to the decision which dinky diesel floats our boat and which one sinks our battleship. First category, practicality. And the loser here is the C3 with 2.5 points out of the maximum 5. The Skoda manages 3, whilst the Vw Polo takes first place here with 3.5. Next, it's value for money, and the VW can't help but lose here with a hefty price tag. It gets just 2 points. Surprisingly, the Skoda doesn't get it all its own way here, and it must share first place with the Citroen C3. Both get 3 points. style, and the VW's discreet charms are not enough to sway our judges. They're so shallow. They give it a miserly 2 points. The Skoda catches our attention a little more though, with 3 points, but it is the Citroen that turns heads and draws the wolf whistles, earning a hefty 4. Getting to grips with the handling, and the Citroen loses out, managing just 2 points. The VW does fare a little better with 2.5, but it's the Skoda that wins here with 3. In out-and-out performance terms, the Citroen trails again. Its 1.4-litre engine only enough to help it waddle past the finishing line and claim 2 points. The Polo reaches 3 points with its 1.9-litre turbo diesel and its sport badges, but the Skoda again takes the checkered flag, earning 3.5 points. Which means, in reverse order, the Vw Polo Tdi Sport, well-built, sturdy and oozing quality, actually loses out in third place with 13 points. Just in front with 13.5 points is the cheeky little Citroen C3 1.4 HDI. Loads of French charm, but not enough to challenge the Skoda Fabia 1.9 TDI elegance. It puts in a strong and steady performance in every category to take the honours with a respectable 15.5 points. And so to our clutch of dinky diesels here. Well, amazingly, the Polo has to come last, and that's not because there's anything wrong with it as a car, because really there isn't much wrong with it as a car. It's just expensive. According to our figures, at over 14 grand, you would have to do over 100,000 miles in the first 2 years to recoup the extra you pay for it being a diesel. It's a very long way in a small car. Sorry, Polo. And then in second place, well, surprisingly, it is the Citroen C3. And I know it does have its flaws. It's by no means a perfect car, but it is cheap and it does look quite distinctive and different. And you do get a lot of accommodation and space inside, which is good in a small car. All of which means, in first place, our top dinky diesel is this, the Skoda Fabia. Surprising, maybe it really is that fab after all, because what you're getting is more or less the VW, but for at least 2 grand less. Now that's enough money for you to take and spend on something exciting to make up for having perhaps not the most interesting car in the world. That's it for Car File this week. See you next week.